Get your things out of here before I throw them into the street and you with them. Get out before I kill you.
What's that for?
Hollywood's golden age gave us glamour, legends, and some truly strange people. These stars weren't just famous, they were different. Eccentric, obsessive, unpredictable, and unforgettable. Let's take a look at 25 classic film stars whose real lives were far weirder than anything they ever played on screen. Number 1. Carrie Grant and the Acid Revelations. Carrie Grant had it all: the looks, the charm, the elegance. But in the 1950s, something unexpected happened. While still one of Hollywood's biggest stars, he quietly began taking part in a new experimental therapy under medical supervision using LSD. At the time, this wasn't illegal or underground. Doctors were studying LSD as a tool for deep psychological healing. Grant became one of the earliest celebrity participants in this movement. He spoke about it years later, describing vivid experiences that, to him, felt like peeling back the layers of his own mind, not for escape, but to understand himself. For a man known for being cool and composed, Grant's inner world was far more complex, and he wasn't afraid to go looking into the unknown to explore it. Number 2. Peter Lorre and the Morphine Mask. Peter Lorre was unforgettable. His haunting eyes and eerie voice made him a legend of suspense and horror. But behind the roles was a lifelong struggle that few knew about. As a young man, Lorre suffered a serious illness and was given morphine for the pain. Over time, he developed a dependency that quietly followed him for much of his life. He managed to keep working and keep audiences captivated, but those closest to him saw the toll it took. His performances had a kind of raw desperation that now feels even more real. Lorre wasn't just playing broken men, he often was one. Number 3. Orson Wells and the Nose Collection. Orson Wells was a genius, and he knew it, but he was also fixated on one odd thing: his nose. He believed his natural nose was too small for his large face, so he had dozens of prosthetic noses crafted, storing them at home like precious relics. Each film had its own. He'd even refused to shoot scenes until his perfect fake nose was found. And he didn't stop there. Wells would perform magic tricks at parties using his collection of noses, giving them names, personalities, practically treating them like old friends. Number 4. Lupe Vez and the Spitfire of Scandal. Lupe Vez lit up the screen. She was fiery, funny, and unforgettable. Known as the Mexican Spitfire, in a time when Hollywood offered few roles for Latina actresses. Off-screen, she lived just as boldly. She loved big, laughed loud, and never played it safe. But fame is fickle. As the roles dried up and personal struggles mounted, her story took a turn. Lupe's life ended in tragedy, in a moment as theatrical as the roles she loved to play. Tabloids told stories for decades, often cruel and exaggerated, but what endures is her spirit, wild, unapologetic, and impossible to forget. Number 5. Joan Crawford's Haunted Legacy. She was all glamour on screen, a Hollywood queen with an icy smile. But Joan Crawford's daughter, Christina, saw a different side. In her book Mommy Dearest, Christina claimed her mother was abusive, jealous, and controlling. Screaming fits over wire hangers, spiteful lies about her biological parents, and at times, even physical violence. Not everyone believes Christina's version of events, but the controversy has stuck. Joan's tangled relationships, backroom adoptions, and ruthless feud with Bette Davis all paint the picture of a woman for whom control was everything. 6. W.C. Fields, Slingshots and Solitude. W.C. Fields was a legend of early comedy, but offstage, his sense of humor got a little darker. He hated children. He didn't trust banks, and he had a long-standing feud with small dogs. But perhaps the oddest thing? He'd sometimes hide in bushes near the studio and startle passers-by with a slingshot, just for laughs. No one was ever hurt, but a few people got quite the surprise. Fields lived alone, surrounded by books, booze, and little cards with jokes scribbled on them. He liked things just his way, with no interruptions, not even from the neighbors. Number 7. Peter Sellers and the Purple Curse. Peter Sellers could become anyone: a bumbling inspector, a refined gentleman, or a mad scientist, sometimes all in the same film. But off-screen, he could be deeply intense and unpredictable. Friends described mood swings that came without warning. Some co-stars adored him. Others were wary. He once proposed marriage multiple times to the same woman in a single afternoon. Another time, he stopped a scene mid-shoot to accuse someone of staring into his soul. He was brilliant, but brilliance often comes at a cost. And for Sellers, it was the struggle to hold on to a solid sense of self beneath all the masks. Number 8. Elizabeth Taylor's chaos in Cleopatra complex. Elizabeth Taylor wasn't just beautiful, she was mythic in every sense, and she lived her life like a tempest. She married 8 times, most famously to Richard Burton twice. Their relationship was so volatile, when he married someone else out of frustration, Taylor immediately got engaged just to spite him. Her lifestyle was so outrageous, even the Vatican condemned her behavior. But she never backed down. Elizabeth Taylor was Hollywood royalty, and she played the role to the hilt, scandal and all. Number 9. Katherine Hepburn's chilly independence. Katherine Heppern defied every norm of her time. Strong-willed, sharp-tongued, and stubborn to a fault, she did things her own way and didn't care what anyone thought. Though romantically linked to both men and women, Hepburn reportedly hated sex so much she tried it once and never again. She couldn't stand nudity even in movies. If a film scene showed someone undressed, she'd storm out of the theater. That's the kind of intensity only Hepburn could pull off and still be adored for it. Number 10. Clark Gable and the soap and shower paradox. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, charming, manly, heroic, but also a clean freak with a twist. He shaved his chest and armpits to avoid sweat. He traveled with a portable shower, loathing bathtubs because, as he said, you're sitting in your own dirt. And yet his breath, infamously bad. Vivien Leigh said kissing him in Gone with the Wind was like kissing an ashtray full of rotten teeth, dentures and all, a mystery for the ages. 11. Bette Davis, queen of rage and Rottweilers. Bette Davis could command a scene like no one else, but in real life, you had to tread carefully. She was fiery, fierce, and unpredictable. She once cleared out half a restaurant by verbally demolishing a director who dared to wag his finger at her, then smiled sweetly as if nothing had happened. She was also weirdly obsessive. When casting a small dog for a single scene, she personally auditioned every canine in Los Angeles. That's dedication. Or madness. Maybe both. Number 12. Jimmy Stewart and the Yeti Hand. Jimmy Stewart, the wholesome everyman, brave, noble, soft-spoken, and also an international smuggler. While in India in the 1950s, Stewart helped smuggle a rumored Yeti hand out of Nepal for scientific study. How? By hiding it in his wife's lingerie bag. The hand turned out to be fake, but Stewart's courage never was. This is the same man who flew bombing missions over Europe in World War II and refused to let studios use that fact to boost his career. Quiet dignity with a sprinkle of strangeness. Number 13. Marlon Brando and his Island of Secrets. Marlon Brando wasn't just an actor, he was a storm of moods, appetites, and contradictions. After reaching the height of fame, he withdrew from Hollywood and bought a private island in Tahiti. There, he built his own world. No rules, no press, just Brando, his growing collection of lovers, children, and a steady supply of exotic animals. At one point, he had a pet mongoose who would chase guests across the beach for fun. He also became obsessed with his weight. One day he'd fast, the next he'd eat a dozen burgers. On Apocalypse Now, he showed up dozens of pounds overweight, forcing the crew to shoot him mostly in shadows. Number 14. Tula Bankhead, wild, proud, and barely censored. Tula Bankhead was a storm in pearls. She smoked like a chimney, cursed like a sailor, and lit up every room she walked into. She didn't care what people thought about her drinking, her politics, or her private life. She flirted outrageously, partied loudly, and broke just about every social rule of her time. During one live performance, she forgot to wear underwear and just kept going, unbothered. To Tallulah, the show always went on. She once told a reporter, "I don't know if I'm a good actress, but I'm definitely a personality." She was right, and what a personality it was. Number 15. Dennis Hopper, the madness behind the camera. Dennis Hopper helped define 1960s counterculture on screen. Wild, rebellious, electric. But off-screen, life often blurred into chaos. After Easy Rider, Hopper fell into a spiral of confusion and paranoia. He painted his house entirely black, kept security cameras running at all hours, and sometimes spoke to shadows no one else could see. At one point, he even dug a tunnel in his yard, convinced he needed an escape route, just in case. Whether it was pressure, fame, or something deeper, Dennis lived on the edge of reality, and somehow, that instability added fire to his art. He didn't act strange to get attention. He was just Dennis. Number 16. Shelley Winters and the Suitcase of Secrets. Shelley Winters was a whirlwind of energy, opinions, and sometimes plain chaos. She famously brought a suitcase full of her old movie reviews to parties and forced people to read them aloud. She claimed it was to remind people I could act, though some suspected it was more about making sure she stayed the center of attention. And she didn't care about Hollywood nice. If she didn't like someone, she said it, loudly, even on live television. Number 17. Steve McQueen and the Need for Speed and Danger. Steve McQueen was the king of cool, and he earned it, but he was also reckless to a terrifying degree. He raced cars and motorcycles professionally, performed his own stunts, and once drove a sports car off a cliff for fun. When asked why, he shrugged, "I wanted to see what would happen." McQueen also carried a gun everywhere, just in case things got weird, which in his life they often did. Number 18. Mae West, Diamonds, Dictation, and Delusion. Mae West was never shy about anything. By the time she was in her 70s, she was writing screenplays about herself as a sexy action heroine, played by herself. On set, she demanded bodybuilders half her age as love interests, referring to herself in the third person, and refused to shoot anything less than perfect lighting. She also reportedly traveled with her own gold-plated phone, velvet furniture, and a dedicated manservant to carry her mink coats. When someone asked if she ever worried about being too much, she smiled and said, "Too much of a good thing can be wonderful." 19. Errol Flynn and the Wild Life of Captain Blood. Errol Flynn looked like a pirate, and lived like one. Parties, women, liquor, yachts, you name it. He once tried to smuggle a lion onto a cruise ship. Another time, he was caught sword fighting with real blades at a Beverly Hills party just to settle a debate about who was more swashbuckling. Flynn's autobiography was titled My Wicked, Wicked Ways, and believe it or not, it understated his lifestyle. Number 20. Gloria Swanson and the Mummified Monkey. Gloria Swanson, star of Sunset Boulevard, carried herself like a goddess, but she also carried something else. She reportedly kept the mummified corpse of her pet monkey in her bedroom, preserved, dressed, and displayed like a doll. Some say it was grief. Others say she just didn't like to let go. Either way, it left an impression on everyone who visited her home, and not always a pleasant one. Number 21. Tony Curtis and the Mirror Obsession. Tony Curtis loved being on camera, but he loved watching himself even more. At home, he surrounded himself with mirrors, including in places most people wouldn't think to put one. He claimed it was for acting practice, but it quickly became something of an obsession. He also painted surreal art in his spare time, often with himself as the subject. His dream was to be remembered, not just as a star, but as a one-man gallery. Number 22. Marlene Dietrich and the Travel Trunk of Glamour. Marlene Dietrich was the epitome of European elegance, but travel with her? That was a logistical nightmare. She brought a truckload of luggage, including 50 pairs of shoes, 5 fur coats, and her own full-length mirrors. She even packed a personal fog machine to make sure her close-ups looked mysterious wherever she went. On tour for the USO, she once had her luggage carried across a muddy battlefield on soldiers' backs. When told it was impractical, she replied, "So is war." Number 23. Howard Hughes and the Tissue Empire. Howard Hughes was a genius, a billionaire, and a prisoner of his own mind. He became so terrified of germs that he locked himself in a hotel room for months. He wore tissue boxes on his feet, insisted staff hand him everything with gloves, and he wrote movie scripts on scraps of napkins because paper made him anxious. He bought entire movie theaters so he could screen films alone. Eventually, he disappeared from public life altogether, a recluse in the sky. Number 24. Jean Harlow's scalp-destroying hair dye. Jean Harlow is known as the original platinum blonde, but the look came at a dangerous cost. To keep her hair that bright white, her stylist used bleach mixed with ammonia applied weekly. The result? Chemical burns, hair loss, and eventually permanent damage to her scalp. She was in her 20s and already wearing wigs. When asked if it was worth it, she simply said, "Blondes get noticed." Number 25. Bela Lugosi and the cape he never took off. Bela Lugosi wasn't just playing Dracula, he became Dracula. He wore his iconic cape not only on set, but at home, in restaurants, and even to bed. He'd greet guests in full vampire regalia and practice his lines in mirrors long after the camera stopped rolling. To him, Dracula wasn't a costume, it was a second skin. And when he passed away, he was laid to rest in that same cape, believing it was his greatest legacy. Hollywood never saw anything like him again. So the next time you watch an old movie, remember, behind that perfect smile might have been a suitcase full of monkeys, a pocket full of diamonds, or a Dracula cape. If you like this peek behind the curtain, tap like, hit subscribe, and tell us which star surprised you the most. See you in the next video.